In this lesson, we're going to continue looking at the File menu, specifically the features of moving, renaming, refreshing, converting line delimiters, and printing. So there may come a time as we work through our project that we decide we want to move a file, maybe from one package to another for some reason. Well, what we can do is select the file that we want to move, go to the File menu and select Move. Now this will bring up a Move dialog where we can create a new package or we can move to a different package. And note that when I select that, it does say Java references will not be updated. So we need to make sure that if there are references that need to be updated, that happens. So if we move to Program or Utilities, it looks like it'll be okay. But moving to the default location, we have that information to pay attention to. And of course, you can't move to its own location. But if we were to move it, we could preview and see what would happen. And it shows us what's going to happen, all the code that's going to be refactored, essentially import declarations that are going to change. And you can look at those and compare them and see the changes here. So basically, the nice thing about the Eclipse IDE is that it knows that if we're going to move files around, there's a lot of refactoring of our code that has to happen. And so it does that for us. Now, I'm not going to perform this move, so I'm just going to back out or cancel. And one last thing that we need to make sure is that if we wanted to deselect one specific part of the move for some reason, we could do that. And that would allow us to not have that change to be performed. Most likely, that would not be the case, though, because these are going to be necessary refactors. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and go through with this move. It doesn't make any sense at this time. But if we were to need to make the move, we could go forward with confidence knowing that our code should refactor and we should be okay with the move. If we decide we want to rename a file, we just select the file that we want to rename. Again, if we were to do password data editor and we were to just type in a new name here and save it, we'll note immediately that's an error because, of course, we want our public class name to match our file name. With that, we can't just go about typing in a new name. So there's a couple different ways we can actually rename this class. And the first way, of course, is to place our cursor over top of the file and just hit the F2. Now that brings up the rename dialog, which again will give us the option to refactor all of our source. The other way would be to go to File, Rename, which you see here is the F2 shortcut. And again, that brings up the same dialog. And so we would check Update References. We may or may not check Update Similarly Named Variables and Methods. So if we decide to update that, for example, a constructor may be named the same that needs to get the update, we can select that. Of course, we need a new name in order to change it. Once again, if we hit Finish, it would automatically apply all the changes. If we want to preview them, we can once again select Next and see places in our code specifically where that change is going to happen and deselect some if we so desire. Once again, I'm not going to perform the rename, but you could if you wanted to. So the refresh is kind of a tricky situation. F5 will refresh, and essentially at this point there's nothing to refresh. If we wanted to refresh our project, the project does need to be open. We can hit F5 and it refreshes and makes sure that essentially anything that we've updated outside of this editor for some reason gets brought in or whatever we need it to do. You see, I think the password data.bin and the passwords.txt now have shown up into our project directory by that refresh. So now that our project is fully refreshed, if for some reason we need to change between Windows and Unix, we can actually convert our line delimiters in our files. So we could select to convert to the Unix line ending versus the Windows line ending. Now again, I'm not going to actually perform this, but it is available to us. And of course, if we have any kind of file available in our editor in focus, we can actually print that file. And again, Control P would also bring up the print dialog, which you can see that both of those will allow us to print that file and give us the ability to then have a hard copy version of it. So finally, the last thing I want to look at is restarting. Now restarting, of course, is just going to force a restart of our workspace. So clicking on this would actually shut down everything, force you to save any changes, and restart the Eclipse environment. You can see it saves off my workspace and starts the restart. Now the restart will take some time, and you can see that the restart was successful. So that wraps up our look at the File menu options for moving, renaming, refreshing, converting line delimiters, and printing.